So the time has finally come. I get to do the movie that I started the whole series for. Wall-E to me is what sparked this love for animation. I've always loved cartoons and all of that, but I figured it was more for kids, and at the time Wall-E came out, 2009, I was kind of already hitting a point in my life where animation and cartoons were becoming a little less stellar in my eyes. I mean, I was 10 whole years old. At least until I saw this film. This changed my mind about animation as an art form, as well as sparked my initial interest into cinema and all the stories it has to offer. It was truly different from anything I'd seen prior to this in its presentation. Maybe the story itself isn't entirely different from some other things, however its presentation, especially with its characters, certainly is unique. Wall-E as a character is very lonely. He lives alone after cleaning the earth for assumedly over several hundred years, in a world full of robots that are just like him, but they're just breaking down and leaving just himself. The first shot we see of Wall-E is him rolling through the desolate wasteland of what is left of the earth, where we are also taken to his home. Here he watches old show tunes on an iPod after he does his daily work, longing for some sort of companionship. He's curious and adventurous, and we see a little bit of possibly what caused him to survive for so long. Over the years, other Wall-E units have broken down, and when his parts are old and breaking down, he uses the parts from other Wall-E bots to keep him going. On top of this, his general demeanor shows that he doesn't always focus on his directive or job. He leaves room to explore, relax, and live his life. He's not soulless and does not work himself to death as his fellow robots have. When we first meet Eve, she's focused solely on her job, but soon after becoming frustrated with the lack of progress, she lets loose a little bit as well as meets Wall-E after trying to kill him multiple times. All of her personality can really be seen in her design. Pixar cites her roundness as inspiring the female design, as they feel that a femininity is to be coded in like a smooth and round, whereas males, i.e. Wall-E, are square and rigid. She's clean and focused on her directive, allowing for little to no distraction. She's duty-based, showing what matters to her the most. All of this is shown to us and not told, which is the most important part of this. It's amazing how much of the character we can get without normal or traditional dialogue. Even to the point where they tell each other their names, it says a ton about who they are. When Eve first speaks to Wall-E, she runs through several different languages, speaking clearly to a point, whereas Wall-E, he just struggles to even say his own name, with his speech being said very slowly. So what about the humans? The humans are a very contentious bit of the story. When the movie first came out, it was critiqued by some organizations for being anti-obese and generally being an undesirable interpretation of obese people. But the reason that the humans have become this large is due to a loss of bone density from their time in space. Because of this, over the years, humans have lost bones and have honestly just become more like blobs, which was actually the original pitch for their design, but it was thought to be too unrealistic or unappealing. I will say, most of the human stuff, save for the captain, is not very interesting to me. With the humans, especially John and his counterpart, it shows definitely how far humans have gone to the point where they were completely unaware of their surroundings. I felt they weren't really needed other than attempting to make something of a mirror for Wall-E and showing how robotic the humans had become in their situation, whereas Wall-E kind of represents a more human protagonist than the humans themselves. He has goals and a longing for something more than just trash in his existence. I really like the captain as he has more of an arc and is where we also learn a little bit more about the human situation. We learn in his quarters that humans can live remarkably long now, but we also get the sense of how complacent they've gotten in space. He's content to sleep, eat, and make his morning announcements. The announcements are pretty interesting as he states that it's the only thing that he gets to do on the ship, showing that he's bored of his situation and showing that he doesn't really have any control over the ship. It's all done by auto. And they're just kind of floating aimlessly in space at this point. An example of this is when Eve comes back from her expedition with Wall-E. Captain shakes Wall-E's hand and gets dirt on it. He asks the ship to scan it, and the computer gives him the definition of dirt, as long as some synonyms, one of them being Earth. From here we get a sense of how far gone the humans are. We get a look at all of the things that the humans used to do. Things we take for granted, like farming, dancing, sports, all of these little things that make Earth and humans amazing. There are two themes that generally come from the film. the main one being population and the effects that humans have directly on our planet. The other is hypercapitalism. It's horrifying and unsustainable, and that profit is theft, and that a super corporation should not be able to purchase the world's government. Okay. Sorry. Not that this video isn't about that. Anti-capitalistic rhetoric aside, Wall-E shows some direct effects of overt consumerism and the environmental impact disposability has on the world, with the influence of a super company such as AT&T, god damn it, by and large. There's a sense of disconnect, I will say, between Disney and this giant corporation owning all of the world's governments. However, it's a good message, I guess. You can really see the influence B&L has not in the beginning of the film, but when we get to the Axiom for the first time. Everything is plastered in the logo and is provided by the company. But here's a section that doesn't last very long, however. It shows the influence this corporation has over this populace. You see babies being taught the B&L ABC straight from a young age. Effectively the Mickey Mouse clubhouse of the Wall-E universe here. It's a fairly similar situation to our reality, where from a young age we're taught to like certain brands based on entertainment presented to us at the time, which then inspire us to make YouTube videos about the IP from the brand years later. However, with all the dystopian imagery, I think the captain is supposed to capture the energy of the human spirit. As the captain says, he doesn't want to survive, he wants to live. He and the other side characters are meant to show that there's more to the human existence than just being comfortable and existing to survive. The film is absolutely gorgeous. They gave it an almost documentary and live action feel, especially with the actual parts that were shot in live action. Those points in the film give the past another worldly feeling, like we're so far from that point that it generally is a whole other world. There's a subtle camera shake and racking focus during certain scenes of the movie, giving it a very real feel, otherwise known as verisimilitude. I knew that art of film class in college would help with something. That aside, space is absolutely gorgeous. The defined dancing scene is one of the prettiest that Pixar has ever created. It can just not be stated enough how amazing these environments are and how different they all feel. From towering skyscrapers of garbage, the dry sea, the nebulas of space, the inside of the Axiom as well as the outside. Just like in Ratatouille, Wall-E has this awesome character animation as well that perfectly describes the characters' personalities, which is especially important for the robots. Every movement, design, and sound has a specific purpose. Speaking of sound, with characters that don't speak with traditional dialogue, sound design is super important to this film. Ben Burtt brings his best as Pixar's first sound designer that was hired even before the film was made. Prior to this, Burtt worked on a little-known film series known as Star Wars, commonly known for the sounds made by the various droids of the film. Sounds fitting, does it not? He brings that same form to Wall-E, showing that communication can be done with more than just words. In order to convey all the sounds in space, Burtt ended up composing over 2,400 sound files that were eventually used in the film, more than he ever created for the entirety of the Indiana Jones films as well. The second most he created was for Star Wars A New Hope, which only had about 800 sounds for comparison. It all just sounds so real and awesome. It's very hard to quantify. When animation is gorgeous, you notice it. However, great sound is defined by our inability to notice when exactly there is a certain type of noise being utilized. If you take the voices of Wall-E and Eve, for example, they're voiced by humans, whose voices are then put through an older style voice warper to get the unique sound as well as give them a little more lifelike quality, thanks to the voice acting. When you look at Otto, the way he is characterized, solely a robot who follows his orders, Pixar simply used a text-to-speech program to get more standard robot-style voice for Otto to separate him from Wall-E. In my eyes, the story is told a lot through the sounds of everything, from how mechanical Wall-E sounds when he moves, to the subtle warble of Eve floating, to the little scurry of Mo. Sounds play an important part of characterization, assisting where dialogue may have in a different movie. Another point of sound that massively brings the quality of Wall-E up is the score. Thomas Newman comes back from Nemo and he really swings for the fences with this one, bringing my favorite part of Nemo to the forefront, creating an ethereal score that perfectly captures the feeling of space and punches you in the face with emotion. Take these two scenes. The first being the captain having his first confrontation with Otto when he tries to put the plant in the plant whole thing. Not really sure what it's called, plant pod? Anyway, at this point, we get a sense of Otto's motives as well as the captain's wants to return home. We get a quiet build-up suggesting something is wrong or hidden behind Otto's intentions. As Otto reveals what is happening and why they shouldn't return to Earth, we get a sort of defeated cue from the song. The captain turns around, and with the swelling of the music as the captain decides to take the fate of the ship into his own hands. And then he gets scared by Otto. The music cuts and switches to Otto's directive, including a new, more robotic song. The second scene I of course want to talk about is the dance in space. Absolutely beautiful scene capped off by the score. Every move and little float in space is just absolutely perfectly timed and gives off such a warm feeling. All of the communication between Eve and Wally is told through their movement, and all of the emotion is capped in the score. Thomas Newman here exceeded anything his cousin would have done thus far in terms of movie scores. The emotion behind his direction and process is just too great. It still stands to be one of the best Pixar scores, second only to The Incredibles, in my opinion. Andrew Stanton, as a director, really found his best piece with this film. His previous two films, Finding Nemo and A Bug's Life, which he co-directed, were good experiments that eventually prepared him for the more masterful storytelling done on this film. Since then, he hasn't really done much. He's been involved in a lot of Pixar properties, but he hasn't really found anything like Wall-E since this. I know at this point I'm just repeating myself, but for the lack of dialogue in most of this film, the amount of connection we feel to these two robots is just amazing. To wrap this up as I approach my 6th page of this script, Wall-E is obviously my second 10 out of 10. I'm putting it above Ratatouille as my favorite. This, from the original top 3, hasn't really changed much. The 2 Easter eggs are super easy to find in this one. A113 can be seen here, and the Pizza Planet truck can be seen here. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Bye-bye. Okay, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos, go ahead and go watch the Pixar ones. You can also see the paintball ones that I've been filming and editing. I'm really passionate about the sports stuff. It's very fun to do, and this little Pixar thing is also one of my favorite things to do on the internet. Thank you. Bye-bye.